To the Steve Setka Show, your uncensored champion. I'm your host, Steve Setka, and I'm diving deep into the things that matter most to me: sport, freight, and faith. On the show, we're not afraid to go beyond the surface. We get real, share bold opinions, and hit you where it may be uncomfortable. These are the topics I'm passionate about, and I bet they'll spark something in you too. So buckle up for quick, high-impact episodes that'll shake you up. To the Steve Setka Show, we're on episode 19, the second go-round at episode 19, because the first go-round with another guest who we'll have to have back on, it didn't work. We failed. We were talking about grit and fortitude and whatnot, and we actually learned the lesson about not getting what we're looking for all the time and having to redo. So tech doesn't necessarily always work properly, and it's not a guarantee, but let's go on to the proper episode 9. And every episode on the Steve Setka Show, we frame with a Bible verse. So everyone's heard of this one before. John 8:32 suggests, "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." That is so relevant in the world. That is so relevant in what we're going to talk about today. And with that being said, I'd like to introduce today's guest on the show, Butch Phelps. Set us free with the truth, Butch. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thank you, Steve. It's good to be a better verse for this actual episode. Yeah, I'm a muscle engineer, probably is the best way to describe what I do. When I was much younger, going into high school, I thought I wanted to be an aerospace engineer, and I wound up going into business instead. And over the years, in 20 years in business, I retired early and I got into muscles only because I had back pain. And what I realized was that once I got into the muscle side, which was a great story to begin with, I started to understand that my engineering skills played a master role in the muscles of the human body and how that works. When I retired early from the corporate world, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I never really had an interest in health beyond just fitness itself. And so I went into massage therapy just trying to figure out how to stop my own back pain. And once I got in, it was almost like a divine intervention. I remember my wife was asking me questions about what I was doing. And I said, I know things about the human body that I don't know how I know them, but all I know is I know them and they're coming to me clear as a bell. And the right people that I needed in my life showed up at the right time. The right doors opened at the right time. And I learned from 5 mentors. 2 were neurosurgeons. One was a kinesiologist. Another was a PT, and then a chiropractor. And each of them brought a piece of the puzzle to me. And I was smart enough to keep my mouth shut and ears open. And I put those pieces together and literally created what's called the stretch and release technique, which has helped hundreds of people who've been dealing with pain, sometimes for years, get rid of it in a matter of weeks. And it's just been amazing to see that happen.
That's incredible, Butch. You've struck so many chords with me and the audience as well too. So the listeners of the show know there's 3 things we typically talk about here: freight, faith, sport. Freight is an extension of business. Now you got a business, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on. Faith, because faith is all encompassing with everything we do in life. And sport, because that's the third thing. Those are the 3 things that I love in life. I follow sports. I love sports. Butch, believe it or not, we only met 5 minutes before we chatted on this
Yeah.
call with the recording. I actually have a background in kinesiology. So
Nice.
when you reached out to me and
Yeah.
I read your bio, I was like, who is this? I'm just starting my show. We're 20 episodes in. How did he find me? Which we'll figure that out in due time. But I have a kinesiology degree from the University of Manitoba. I never worked in the field. Okay. But it's always been an interest to me, the human body, human physiology, exercise physiology, etc. So when I read your bio about the 12-pound bowling ball on your head and the stretch method and all the signs of aging and how we can kind of sort of reverse that, it really struck a chord because I was very interested in what you do. So now we're here talking about your business, your brand, or your purpose per se, because I don't really know how that works in your life. But you said
Sure.
you retired the first time and you're
Yeah.
not done serving the world, right? So you're
Right.
serving the world, you're serving God, you're serving the people because you got way more to give back. And from my understanding about health and longevity, is that the more that you serve and the more purpose you have in life, the longer and better quality of life you're going to live. Am I right?
That is very true. It's like, nothing's more exciting to me than to see someone who comes in hopeless and you share a few things with them, open their eyes as to what's actually causing their pain. And then to see someone who it can be someone 70, 80, 90 years old. It can be someone who is 20, 25 years old. To see the smile on their face, your life just becomes amazing at that point because you're giving somebody something back that they lost. I mean, for instance, I work on sometimes young athletes, high school athletes, and there was a baseball pitcher. In fact, there was two of them that I had having arm issues. And the coach, who happened to be a neighbor of mine, he called me and he said, what do you think about that? And we started talking. And I said, well, what I want you to do is send me the videos of how they're pitching. And I said, I want full length head to toe. And he goes, yeah, I don't get it, but okay. Just send him to me. We'll talk about it tomorrow. So he did. And when I started showing him on the videos, I said, the problem with their shoulder is not their shoulder. The problem is that their calves and their ankles are not rotating enough off of the rubber on the mound, and they're overthrowing with their shoulder. And he looked at me really funny because, "Will we stretch your calves?" And I said, "So what do you do? Have them to step off of a curb, lean against the wall, stand on a slant board?" And he goes, "Well, yeah, that's what the PTs told them to do." And I said, "Then they never stretched all their calf muscles because that calf controls the rotation as well as the vertical lateral movement of the foot." And I said, until you open that rotation in the calves and up into the three hamstrings, that's not going to stop. So the one kid had not pitched. He was 14 in a year. And within 3 weeks, I had him back on the mound. And the other kid had had a labrum injury, which they repaired. And within 6 months, he was back on the mound pitching. And the guy with the labrum tear was back to throwing close to 92 miles an hour. So, yeah.
That's
But it's
incredible.
understanding how that body works from head to toe. And that's where
Yeah.
people mess up. Yeah.
Well, that's incredible. I like baseball. I don't follow a lot of baseball, but I understand the mechanics of baseball. I'm a lefty, by the way, southpaw.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I can throw some decent heat myself. I
Yeah.
know the Jays and I follow a little bit, but I follow every sport. I'm watching PTI most days. I'm listening to
Yes.
Stephen A. Smith, et cetera. They're talking about it. So I understand that. And I also love the science of sport, as I said. So I hear you when you're talking about the arm and you're actually looking at the entire body head to toe because it all connects, right? So my background in sport from a playing perspective was hockey, of course, Canadian, Central Canada. We got
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
cold here. Same thing, right? Studying the body and how it works and skating at the same time as playing hockey, etc. Golf, played football, and a variety of other sports. Now I play squash, which is quite
Yeah.
interesting because I got to pay attention to my body in my mid
Right.
30s while I'm moving around on the squash court. But it does connect for sure. And it's incredible how the entirety of the body plays into your motion and your movement in really
Yeah.
every sport. Now, you made
Yeah.
me think of something here. There's a really interesting fella that's written a couple books, that's worked with a couple really famous athletes, notably Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan. Tim Grover, I'm sure you've heard the name
Further.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're
Yeah.
reminding me about what Tim Grover is all about, right? Like he's a body
Yeah.
engineer and he helps
Yes.
people optimize and maximize their body, among
Yes.
many other things that he does, which is incredible. So I'm sure
Yeah.
you've studied that and you've
Yep.
created a brand around this,
Right.
and your business is taking off or will take off. So tell me a little bit about how you've turned a passion for health and your body and muscle repair into a venture for your future.
Exactly. Well, that's it's great. Great question. Yeah, like I said, I initially got into it because I had back pain so bad that when I would get out of my car, I'd crawl on my hands and then pull myself up by the door handle. And I went the typical routine, the physicians and so forth, and they helped it as much as they could, but it was temporary at best. And I just kept thinking, man, I'm 38, 39 years old. I just lost 105 pounds at the time. I'd been a three-sport athlete most of my life, and I just lost 105 pounds, and I was trying to get back into shape and looked good, but felt terrible. And then as I got into learning about the muscles of the human body, and then as I started working with the two neurosurgeons, one of them was more into dementia and the brain work. And when he started to open my eyes about how the brain connects with the muscles on an emotional basis, and how everything you think, feel, and do actually can cause tension in that muscle. Then when I did that, and then I met Aaron Mattis, who's a kinesiologist, and I studied with him for 6 months to learn a stretching technique that he created called active isolated stretching. And I started to see that the way that we were stretching in sports and the way we were stretching in gym and so forth was actually not serving us in the best way. By including that brain in it and including, holding it for like 5 seconds at a time, but repeating it 10 times so that the brain can see that this is safe, all of a sudden my back pain started going away. I'm now 65. So that's been, 25 years ago when that happened. I haven't had that back pain since, once I figured that out. Once I saw that, and I thought, oh my gosh, you got to be able to show people how to do that. And so I started working with some people. In fact, I started with a chiropractor with no clients and no marketing and no money. I had a rent of a $400 a month for a room. And as I started working on patients of his, and he kept saying to me, "What are you doing in that room?" He goes, "Man, they're adjusting really easy, you know." And when I started to show him what I was doing, he became fascinated with it. And of course, the business started to grow. And then I volunteered for 5 years at a senior friendship center. I figured what better place to really test out what I'm thinking with people who are older, because they're always in pain. And they had 54 retired physicians of every persuasion out there. And I was sitting having lunch one day, and two of the doctors came in and sat down with me, and they said, "So I got a question for you." I said, "What's that?" He goes, "What is it that you're doing with these people?" And I said, "What do you mean, good or bad?" He goes, "No, no, it's good. Whatever you're doing is good. I just don't know what you're doing." And I said, "Well, let me show you." Well, by the time I got to the room, there were 8 physicians around the table with me. Some were orthopedists, some were neurologists, some were cardiologists, and they're around the table with me. And I started to show them what I was doing. And by the time I was done, they were showing me their MRIs and X-rays, asking my opinion for their stuff, you know. Then I started getting involved into the doctors' meetings, and it took off from there. In the business side of it, as I started to build my practice, I noticed that 99% of my marketing was coming strictly from referrals, and the business was growing more and more and more. And then I got on YouTube and created a channel, The Muscle Repair Shop. And that channel has started taking off. We're almost up to 4,500 subscribers at this point, and it's moving. And so now I'm starting to build online courses that people can get to who can't get to me here, to start helping them out, which was kind of funny because I had a marketing guy suggest to me to do the videos. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work. Videos with the stretching. So I started to set up how I wanted to do the videos, put in a formula for it. And next thing I know, people are contacting me from all over the world. There's been things from bruxism, which is grinding your teeth, to plantar fasciitis. And they're like, "Oh my gosh, I've had this for like 8 months or 2 years. And I've done this like 3 or 4 times, and the pain has dropped by 50%. And I'm just like, that's insane. How can somebody watch a 15-minute video and that happen? You know? And it's just kept growing from there. And so doing the podcast, and I've got a newsletter that I put out and so forth. And then I wrote a book. So I wrote a book called Stretch and Release to help teach people. And I just was told by my publisher of the day that I've been given an award by the Florida Authors and Publishers Association for the book. So I'm like, this is like insane. I had no idea it was going to take off like this.
That's crazy, Butch. And the more you talk, the more intrigued I get, because you're saying all these different things that are, falling right on my lap, and I needed this right at this time. Let me take a step back. We talk about faith on this show. I don't believe in coincidences, okay? I believe God puts people in positions where they connect with others on purpose when they need it, okay?
Yes.
Exactly. So like you reaching out to me, us connecting, taking a few weeks to get this podcast and this show going was so intentional and on purpose. And I'll tell you why. Okay. There's 2 things that you have in your life that really determine everything: your health and your word. What you say is who you are. And if you can't keep your health, you can't keep your word, you really don't have anything. Okay. You know, a lot of people, I'm sure, so do I, who have a lot of money and very little health left, and they would trade it all for the reverse, right? There's a fellow, Brian Johnston, who I know out there. I believe it's Brian Johnston's his name, who does the reverse aging, right? And his method is called "Don't Die" or "Never Die," right? So he wants to keep getting healthier and healthier and reverse his aging so he never dies, right? Because he was a tech entrepreneur who let his health go so far away, and he made a whole ton of money. But he said, "I'm going to die before I have the opportunity to create all this beauty and this greatness in the world." And we all know plenty of people like that. That's number 1. Number 2, I've been waking up recently, Butch, in the morning, going to bed at 10:30, waking up at 5:30 or 6, feeling like shit. Okay. And garbage. And I'm like, I'm sleeping 7.5, 8.5, 9 hours, hitting the circadian rhythms. All right. I eat pretty well. I look good. I'm 6 feet tall, 90 pounds. I lift weights every day, and I do some sort of cardiovascular exercise. Right. Why do I feel like shit in the morning? And my wife and I are discussing this every day for the past month or so. And I'm 33 years old now, almost 34. And this is
Yeah.
happening to me. And I have a kid on
Yeah.
the way. So I'm
Yeah.
like, what am I doing that's so wrong when I go in the world and I get complimented on my physique
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
look good? And I talked to my coach and he's like, that's dangerous because that inflates your head. But the reality is that you're not feeling that way. So I need to change what I'm
Yes.
doing. So
Yeah.
when we're done this call or in the near future, I'm going to jump into the muscle repair shop on YouTube. We're going to talk more mobility and less stretching and talk more about the details so I can change my
Yeah.
life. So you've made an impact on me. You said I look good, but I felt terrible. And you're talking mobility. And
Yeah.
the last thing I want to say, Butch, is that you have this message, right? And your message is meaningless unless you can present it and you can sell it. And I told my wife before I went on this show, because we were going to eat dinner and we're going to have some food after this. And she
Right.
knew I was
Right.
all excited because I said, this guy reached out. He was so cool. His sales pitch was incredible. I can't not take this interview, right? He's got so much he's got to say, and I got to share this message with the team,
Right.
right? Your message is meaningless unless you can present it, and you're selling it very well. And you're very humble in your approach. So with that all being said, this is positive, this is energetic, but I want to shift a little bit here. I want to talk specifically about the challenges, the punches in the gut, or the things that you've had to overcome in order to get to this point of success. Because the viewers might listen to you and they might say, oh, it's great, it's amazing. This guy's
Yeah.
an overnight success. That's ridiculous, right? There's a lot of pain, there's a lot of struggle, there's a lot of suffering. Tell us about the hardship you've overcome.
So there's been several, and the funny part about it, you're right. Nothing is just by surprise. Everything is, I think, is designed. And the reason why I say that, when I was 18 years old, I was in a head-on collision. A guy hit me at 55 miles an hour. I broke my pelvis in 7 places, and I broke my left arm completely in 2. And I remember it was in North Carolina, and there was a guy named Dr. Hundley who was the doctor who took care of me. And I said to him, because this was 1978, I said to him, I know that they're starting to put metal in people's bodies. So I guess with my arm especially, I'll probably get a ride in my arm. And he goes, no, sir. He said, I believe if the good Lord wanted you to have metal in your body, you'd come that way. He said, you're a strong young man. At the time I was 6'4", about 220 with about a 10% body fat. And he said, you're going to heal just fine. He said, some of these days you're not going to like me so much, and some days you're going to love me. But he said, if you listen to me, I'll get you back to where you need to be. And he taught me a lot about the brain, which I didn't realize at the time how helpful that was going to be, and getting back. And then as I fast forward, I got married, had 2 kids. And then at the age of 30, I weighed 315 pounds. And my doctor came to me and she said, by the time you're 40 with your family history, you're probably going to have a stroke or you're going to die unless you change what you do. And I was very fortunate because as a primary care, she'd gone back to school, studied nutrition, and was big into nutrition. And she played with my mind to teach me how to eat food as fuel to change the way I ate. Now they call it food sequencing. Back in 1987, she had her own thing, or 97, she had her own thing, and so I ate that way. I lost 105 pounds in 18 months. Kept it off until 2020. And then I went back and took off another 30 pounds following those same instructions in like 4.5, 5 months. And so tying that in, even though I was in business along the way, it was breadcrumbs teaching me about the human body. And I had no idea why I needed to know these things. And so when I got into the massage and I got into learning about the muscles of the human body, I mean, I literally, like I said, I had a chiropractor. He said, I'll rent you a room. I had nothing. I mean, I went to massage places and they wouldn't hire me because they were looking for women as massage therapists and didn't really need men at the time. And so I literally built the business from scratch right from day one. But the thing was that, as I was beginning to learn about those muscles, and I always said to my younger friends, it was, if you think about it in the terms of doors, when I was making decisions as to what to do, it was like walking into a grocery store where you had an automatic door that opened up. And when those doors automatically opened up, I knew I was in the right place versus one that I had to jiggle the handle a little bit to try to get in. And to give you an example, I went back to school in 2015 and I thought I wanted to go into becoming an osteopath. And I had the grades. I went to the osteopathic school, talked to them. They definitely would accept me. And then I realized that with the residency at my age at the time, because I was 55, that it would just be too much too late. And I lucked out by coming back to my advisor at the school, and she put me into what was called aging sciences, which really played in well with what I do here because it's about how the body ages. So I've had some ups and downs with it, and you just have to keep fighting through it. But it's always felt like ever since from 1999, 2000 on, that I just stepped on you go in the airport, you got these automatic conveyor belts where it's like a moving sidewalk. I felt like I just stepped on a moving sidewalk. And as long as I kept my eyes open and ears open and my mouth shut, it just seemed to take me right where I needed to be. Sometimes we get the ideas that we need to do something, or we want to do something a certain way. Sounds good in the beginning, but you get to that point and it may come a time where it's like, you know what? No, we need to go to the left here. We need to go to the right. Be open to that, because sometimes that's your intuition and talking to you to make it, putting you in the right path. And that's exactly what I did. It's a little scary because you think, oh my gosh, I've been wanting this for like years. And then all of a sudden, boom, it changes, and you just go with that and you run with that. So for me, it's like, and it's kind of laughing because you're saying, at 33, you look good, but you wake up and you feel crazy. And I'm thinking, it's almost twice your age. I'm 65, and I wake up at 4:30 in the morning going to the gym, and I'm wide awake and ready to go with no pain. So yeah, it can get better. It can
Well, I'm
get
gonna
better.
get there, Butch. It's life's about ups and downs, and
Yeah.
there are challenges and stresses, and the important part is that I'm aware, and that I'm talking to people like you, and that we're talking to each other, we're connecting with people, and we're doing what we were intended to do, to interact. We were designed in order to create beauty and love and wonder within each other, and that's exactly what you're doing. And I love what you're doing because you're taking the natural world and you're just creating a brand around it, and you're looking at what is conventional wisdom and flipping it on its head. Because my wife and I talk about this all the time. We're having a baby in 4 months, our first baby, and we're trying to do it as much outside of the system as we can. Okay. So we went to the hospital for the ultrasound, which is the only time we hope we have to go to the hospital. And so we're going to a place called the birth center, which is within the system, within the government. It's a bit different in Canada than it is in the United States. So
Right,
social
right,
medicine, right? So
right.
we go there. It's no drugs. It's the birth center. It's only births. It's as natural as possible. We're not finding out the sex of the baby, all these different types of things, because she and I both believe in the body can heal itself, or nature can heal the body more than the medical system can, per se. That's not
Right.
a knock on the medical system. I do understand they have a purpose, they're valuable and all this, but we try to use it as little as possible. I think the best hospital is one you never have to go to, right?
Exactly.
Which is really the goal, right? And I understand why they exist. But you said something else that was very interesting, which was it was risky and it was scary. And I talked to a friend of mine the other day who I had on the show, actually. He's a lawyer, and he
Yeah.
called it the fence illusion. When
Yeah.
you're, like you said, walking through a door and it's opening up, or you have to jiggle it, right? Think of a fence. When you're like, one side of the fence is comfort and ease and joy and just whatever. And then you got the fence and you're sitting on that fence, and the other side is uncomfort or discomfort, nerves, the unknown, right? And you have to move to one side or the other. Well, you're not
Right.
really sitting on the fence
Right.
if you're thinking about one or the other. You're taking the easy route. So what you got to do is jump over that fence. You got to get uncomfortable. You got to get scared. You got to take the risks, which is what you did, which is what exactly we're doing with the Steve Setka Show, my wife and I, and building a team and a brand around this. Because if
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
keep doing what I do as a freight broker and a transportation professional, as a business owner, which I've done for a while, and I'm successful
Sure.
doing it, made good money, right, and lived a good life, I'm going to keep going down that same path of comfort. I'm not going to get where I really need to go. So that
Exactly.
really struck a chord in terms of how you're doing it with natural and herbal health. One last thing I want to talk about and touch on that you said in your natural perspective about chiropractic and being open to the mainstream medical system and the non-mainstream system. John Stockton, are you familiar with the name?
Utah Stars. Utah Jazz, I
Utah
mean, sorry.
Utah Jazz star, right?
Yeah.
The all-time assists leader. in the
Yes.
NBA. I talked with him on a podcast because there was some stuff going on through COVID where he was controversial, et cetera, which is whatever. Not the point of the show. He educated me and us on a show that I was participating on and called into about the system, how it changed 100 years ago in natural medicine going towards the mainstream system, which is kind of crazy. And if you want to get more into that, I recommend doing that on your own time.
Exactly.
Anybody listening to the show. But there's so much wonder in that nature. There's so much beauty in using your hands, using your love. The things you talk about on your website and on your YouTube channel that we have at our fingertips. And you said something else was really cool. Was God put our bodies together a certain way? And if he wanted metal in our body, he'd probably design it that way. And
That's
that
right.
changed your whole perspective at 18,
Yeah.
which is fascinating, 40 some
Yeah.
years ago, which is
Yeah.
crazy. So I'm very, very excited about your future. I'm excited to check out your channel. And I'm just so blessed that we had this opportunity. So tell me more about the brand, how people find you on LinkedIn, on
Yes.
Instagram, on YouTube, and how we can find more information about Butch Phelps.
Exactly. So I'm on YouTube. I've got the channel at the Muscle Repair Shop. There's about 180 free videos on there that you can scroll through and listen to. Most of them are running somewhere between 13 to 20 minutes at the max. But the formula is pretty easy. What I talk about is specific ailments. I talk about why most traditional treatments come up short or fail completely. And then how can you solve that problem and then demonstrate and show how to do the stretches to help with that specific problem. That's one of the best ways to get with me. I have a website at musclerepairshop.com where you can sign up for a weekly newsletter. And again, I use that same formula, the newsletter, but I actually have 2 to 3 videos on each newsletter that you can follow. You can keep those newsletters and follow those videos as you need. And you can also find my book on Amazon, which is Stretch and Release. I priced it at about $15 so that most people could afford to buy the book. The book is more like a manual. It starts out talking about the nuts and bolts of a stretch and release technique, why that is important, how the brain works with the muscles. Again, it goes into why do typical treatments come up short most of the time. And then in the back of the book, it goes into specific areas of the human body, neck and shoulders, back, knees, and hips, feet as well. And there's QR codes in the book that you can scan with your phone and get to the videos to show how those work. And that's the best way to find me in those areas. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on at Butch Phelps. I'm on Facebook with Muscle Repair Shop, and I'm on Instagram with Muscle Repair. So yes, I'm around different places.
Very quickly, Butch, where are you located geographically and how did you find Steve Setka?
Okay, I'm located in Sarasota, Florida, and the way I found you was on neededitgas.com. I found you there,
I
and
knew
that's how I
it.
got there. Yes,
That
yes,
is
that's
awesome.
how I found you
I
there.
engaged with them, not through this platform here between you and I, but someone sent it to me, and I'm
Yeah,
looking at that, and
yeah,
I was thinking about podcast guesting and
yeah,
getting people
yeah,
on my show in both ways, and that's fantastic. And I think that's a wonderful way to market your brand
yeah.
and your business. Last thing, Butch, you give out a lot of free content, which is incredible. If people want to go to a deeper level and work with you one on one in a group, how do they do that?
So there's two ways. Number one, if you're close enough to me, you can come to my office. You can do an in-person visit. If not, you can contact me from my website and we can do an online one-on-one session online. There is a charge for that as well. They typically last between 30 to 45 minutes. What I'll do there is in either case, whatever stretches, we'll talk about first what's going on and then we'll design the stretches that's going to help you, and then I'll send you the videos online or in person so you have them at home to practice. And then we'll get back within a week. On the first 2 to 3 weeks, we'll get back within a week so that I can make sure A, you're doing them right, and then B, add to that so that you can continue down that path to help yourself with that. So right now, there's two different ways of doing it, online or in person. By the end of the summer, I'll have 2 courses available that someone can purchase and follow that. And of course, it's theirs for life once they buy it.
Incredible. I'm going to leave the audience with some phrases that Chat GPT spit back at me. If you want to look into these more, you reach out to Butch Phelps. The stretching myth: chronic pain is not a life sentence. The 12-pound bowling ball analogy. The science of aging well. Truth and healing. Faith, purpose, and service. Butch Phelps, thanks so much for joining the show. Go out, kill it in your life, and we'll see you next time on the next episode.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. I hope you found value in what we shared and that you'll take it with you to positively impact the world around you. If so, we'd love for you to take a moment to rate, review, and share the show because we're on a mission to grow and reach more hearts. Prayers, gratitude, and love. Until next time.